Hey everybody, it's Jon Meyers from Write Better Together. Look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
We interrupt this, whatever you're watching, for a commercial. A commercial? That sounds like the way I started the last commercial.
Well, is this the same commercial?
No, I know. So I was watching the internet, Emily, and
we're
on
watching the internet.
Yes. And on the internet, I learned that we were writing a book and that we were only a third of the way done.
We are.
And it didn't have a subtitle. And the book's done already. And it had a subtitle. So what's going on with our book, Emily?
So our book, you probably already know about it, is called Write Anyway.
Oh, yes.
Colon.
Oh, there's our colon again. That's so gross when you say colon in the middle of it.
Giving yourself permission to keep writing no matter what.
Yes, and it does. Good or bad, life happens. They're going to have it pretty soon. And if you come to Oklahoma City, it'll be your first opportunity to get us to autograph it for you.
Yeah, have we mentioned that we're going to be at a writing conference in Oklahoma City, August 30th through September 2nd?
Teaching a MasterClass.
So keep an eye out because it'll be there soon. It'll be in the world.
Out of its bubble. Our book is coming out of its bubble.
We'll have a new segment every week. Book, how did you get out of your bubble?
Welcome everybody to Write Better Together. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hey, look everybody, it's Jon Meyers.
Oh my gosh, it's just us. There's no other person yet.
Well, but we will have a guest today.
We will.
Yeah, we have Misty L. Butler with us, and she's going to be talking about going to conferences and pitching to agents.
And Memoir.
And Memoir. And among other really helpful things. And she is a musician, so all of our listeners who are songwriters, she does that. She writes children's books. So yeah, she's our first guest to do all of those things.
And there was a piano in the background. I almost asked her if the piano had a name, like hunters. Did the plant have a name? But
that's funny. Like people name their guitars, but do they name pianos? Yeah. I don't think so.
Cars and guitars and plants.
Cars, guitars. Yeah.
What else is on quite the list today?
We're going to have call to action responses. Misty's going to give a call to action. Before that, we're going to have a Hey Jon Meyers segment early this time before our interview.
Oh, good. I don't have to wait.
And then we also play our final act with Misty. So I just did all of those out of order. So Jon Meyers, good luck putting that on the text thing.
I have this ready to remind you to ring the bell.
Oh, perfect.
Why don't you just ring the bell now and get it over with?
Sure. So everybody, so if you're new listening, we're doing things all out of order, but this is your weekly reminder to like our channel and our podcast, to subscribe so you always know there's a new episode. You can subscribe to our newsletter if you go to writebettertogether.com, so that goes right to your email, and share and write reviews. And basically we're just asking for your support.
And give us 5-star reviews. I'm not too shy. Like none of this 4-star stuff. It's all or nothing. 5 stars. Emily, How did you get out of your bubble this week?
I had writing group yesterday. I've been wanting to talk about writing group for so long. I mentioned my writing group, and I've mentioned our bowling nights where we get together. We call them bowling nights. I didn't say that last time, but that's when we get together to write. But we had just traditional writing group yesterday. And so I thought I would just say, so the way that this came together is it already existed long before I got there. And it's a group of people. They all go to church together, and they realized that they were all into writing. And so they started a writing group that meets once a month. And then at the school where I work, there was a professor who writes science fiction, and he was like, we should have a genre writing night where professors read from their work, just no matter what field they're in, just anybody who's writing can write. And it was me and this other guy named Matthew, and we read our stuff, and then I found out that Matthew was in a writing group, and he invited me. And so that's how I got into this writing group, by getting out of my bubble and reading at this event, and meeting someone who writes. And so I've been going for about a year, I think. And then we also just had a new member that that I met at the Tennessee Writing Conference, which is part of our conversation today. There you go. It's go to writing conferences.
So they found out, so that you went to the conference and they found out about the writer group through you at the conference.
Yep.
Cool. That's how you grow a community.
Exactly. So we were like getting lunch together and stuff, and she tagged along, and we got to know her, and I mentioned the writing group, and she was like, definitely let me know about that, more details. And so yesterday was her first time joining us, and it was great. So another benefit to going to writing conferences is you might meet those writers.
And you made a new friend.
Made a new friend. How did you get out of your bubble?
I interrupted you, though. You started to say something, and then...
No, it's fine. I think I'm freezing a little bit, maybe.
Put a sweater on. I got out of my bubble. I went for my stupid walk, #stupid walk. At the, I don't know, at some craft show at a winery about 9 miles from my house. And I don't drink, but it was a beautiful sunny Saturday. Strolled around, and I don't have a story, but there's a point to me telling this anecdote that's not a story, is that there's not always going to be a story.
Yeah.
So Emily and I are in the middle of writing a book, and I'm a storyteller, and this book is not a story. It's not a book of stories. And so it's been interesting. I'm learning a lot about myself. So the reason I went to the winery to do my stupid walk was so I would come home with a story. Like I get out of my bubble by walking around the block, around the neighborhood, but I got out of that bubble out of the bubble by going to the winery to try to shake things up, and literally nothing happened. I saw, like, I was the only single person. I saw couples everywhere, and there was a bluegrass Tom Petty cover band that should have been named Southern Accents, and it wasn't. And it was just named, like, I don't even know. If I knew, I wouldn't say it, but it was like Penelope's Pickers or something. And like, at least make a Tom Petty pun if you're a Tom Petty bluegrass cover band. And I want to know from our listeners, should there be a Tom Petty bluegrass cover band? Is that like, I asked one of my friends, I texted one of my friends from there, and she's like, no, just leave Tom Petty alone. And so that's my hot take, that this band shouldn't exist. And but I came home without a story, and that's okay, because not everything's a story. We talked on a previous episode. Emily said that a story starts when something changes. Is that what you said in the Brian episode, I think?
Yeah.
And nothing changed, right? So
yeah.
that's why there was no story. To add to that, I want to add to that too. Jammin said the number one note that you get, and it's actually in a chapter of the book that I'm going to write tonight, is start your story earlier. Have you heard that when you've showed your work to people? Start your story earlier. Start your story earlier. Have you ever heard that?
No, I feel like it's more common to have start your story later.
Oh. And then
so that's interesting.
Once you learn that advice, you start your story earlier, but there's still people that tell you that because that's like the go-to advice. Well, if you started at the moment of change, like you said, there isn't earlier, right? But Jammin pointed out that the story starts when the audience knows the goal and the obstacles. So when something changes, yes, but the audience has to know that. The reader has to know it. The viewer of the film has to know that. If they don't know that until page 12, they're not going to keep reading. That the consumer of the content has to realize that the story has started. And that's two different things.
And I mean, I would say, so the Pixar rules of storytelling, that little like thing that you can see on the internet sometimes, infographic, I guess, it says it starts with every day dot dot dot, and then one day dot dot dot. So it's like you don't know something's changing until you see at least a little hint of what is normal. So yes, it starts when it changes, but it also starts a little bit before that because you have to know that something is changing.
And if you don't know that, if the audience doesn't know that, that's why they turn the channel, because the story hasn't started for them. Yeah. The story hasn't started yet.
Hey, Jon Meyers.
Already?
Yeah, we're doing this early today.
All right. I better pay attention.
So there is an element of my YA fantasy novel about divers
that I haven't read yet
that has come true.
First of all, that wasn't a question. Second of all, you still haven't sent me the novel yet, so I haven't read it.
That's why I'm having a hard time framing this.
So you want me to guess what that
I'll
item is?
I'll give you options.
It's that the locomotive engine, steam engine exists.
No. So here are your options.
Oh.
1, people ride giant boars.
Pigs?
Pigs, yeah. They ride them. 2, people can stay underwater for a really long time period because of the way that their bodies have developed. 3, a food source has run out that they have to go seek.
So all 3 of those things happen in your book, is what you're telling me, and you want me to guess which one of those 3 has come true.
Yeah, which one is happening in real life?
All 3. It's a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question.
So you're not really writing fantasy, you're writing a biopic, and all those things have happened in your life. I don't know, the last one.
No.
Going to seek food source. Okay, so it's not the first one. I don't believe that it's the riding the pigs, so I guess it's the breathing underwater.
Correct. They're not breathing underwater, but they are going underwater for a long time. But I'm going to show you a video that Janice sent me.
Hi, Janice.
Hi, Janice.
According to National Geographic, there's a group of nomadic spear fishermen who can hold their breath for over 13 minutes and dive more than 200 feet deep while looking for fish. But the world record breath hold is only 11 minutes, which means that this entire tribe are all world champion freedivers. And so I booked a flight to see for myself. The members of this tribe have...
Do not try this at home, first of all.
Okay, so the video goes on to say that what has happened is that these people have highly developed spleens, which allows them to have like a better capacity for holding their breaths. And it's called the sea nomad gene. It's a rare, unique genetic mutation. But then the video also goes on to say that because they've developed their own like snorkeling system that they've innovated, they don't really do that much anymore because it's better if you can breathe than if you cannot breathe. But yeah, this has come true because in my story, in my novel, the people have developed a genetic ability to hold their breaths for long periods of time.
But it was true before you wrote the novel.
It was true before I wrote the novel. I was being dramatic.
Oh. 2 things. Whoever the speaker was on that video, they're very untrusting because he heard this fact and he had to book a flight to go find out for himself.
Go find out myself.
Like,
I'm sure he was just trying to get footage of it.
Everything I learned on the internet, I'm going to go book a flight now and go prove it or disprove it myself.
Man, what if you could do that?
And number 2, the interesting one, that would be cool if you could do that. But you would spend a ton of money confirming things that you already knew.
Yeah.
The second thing was the relation between breathing and your spleen.
It explains it. There's a longer like article about it. So they have, let me see where it says. It says the spleen kicks in when a body is submerged in water, highlighting its key role in the human dive response. The spleen contracts to inject oxygenated red blood cells into the circulation, which can up the oxygen in a human's I can't even talk. Which can up the oxygen in a human's blood by 9%.
So that the scripture that came up once tangentially, I can't talk today either. Two podcasters that can't talk today. That where all the components of the body work together, and so you can't lose, you can't chop off the finger or whatever. Who would think that your breathing and your who would think that was all tied to your spleen?
Yeah, like I think in general it's not about breathing, but it is so the
oxygenation.
The feeling of like needing oxygen is because your blood oxygen levels have gone down, and so I guess your spleen aids in increasing your blood oxygen.
So science proves scripture right once again.
Yes. Now what you don't need is your appendix, which my friend sadly learned last week.
Well, you anticipated my question. So indie rocker Tommy Womack from Government Cheese, he had his spleen removed. So can he, like, he can't do this. He can't. Yeah. He can't do this, right?
I would imagine he wouldn't want to. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I mean, maybe you could. It's just that the spleen like helps you circulate oxygen better, but I don't know if that means you can't hold your breath at all. It just says that it can increase the oxygen in your blood. So I don't know.
I'm gonna have to make a clip of this and send it to Tommy Womack and tell him not to test it at home in the bathtub.
I didn't. Sometimes I share these topics not realizing that, like, I'm not a scientist, so don't ask me too many questions.
We're not mental health professionals either, but we talk about it all the time.
Yep.
Cool. I love learning new things.
Yay!
And I'll never forget that either.
Yeah.
Dude, we didn't do the viewer responses.
Are we going to keep just doing things out of order?
Yeah, our most important part of the show is the viewer response and listener responses. And
so this whole episode is just out of order. It's fine.
This whole court is out of order. We've had Rachel Caldecott from South France. She has a new book out about her husband as a glass blower, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And which I hadn't been prepared to talk about that. But she said on the social media, on the Facebook, that she bought Bob's book just because of the recommendation from our show.
Hey.
That was pretty cool. Bob signs That's Not the Way It Works is in our book thing. And then bookshop.
Yeah. We also have a response from my sister Bethany.
Cool.
So this is an important one for this conversation that we're about to have with Misty, because we're talking about submitting to agents, and part of that is rejection. And so in an earlier episode where we talked about that, we talked about anxieties around rejection and fear of failure and things like that. We asked you all to get a no. And Bethany said, I didn't get a no on purpose, but I did get a no email this morning from a submission a few weeks ago. And then, quote, after due consideration, we regret that these poems do not meet our needs for the issue in progress. Quote, Waffle House Professions, quote, came closest. We liked the voice. Not the worst news. Actually, she says, I'll keep going. So they did actually say that her poem about Waffle House was great. And it is great. I love that poem very much.
So it's a single poem. I had the impression it was a collection of Waffle House poems.
She submitted, it sounds like she submitted several poems, but Waffle House Professions is a single poem in that collection.
Well, when it becomes a book, our indie press can publish Waffle House Professions, the entire chapbook.
Yes, cool. Her poetry is wonderful. I can't wait for the world to read them. And in fact, she does have some published that we can share in the show notes.
Oh, very cool.
Bethany, keep going, keep submitting. It just takes that one person to say yes. So
keep getting more no's.
And thanks for sharing that.
We like getting no's at Write Better Together. We're embracing it.
Embrace it.
All right. Now
we have our conversation with Misty.
Hey, look, everybody. Emily Brooks is still here. Who said
Hello,
other
Jon
person?
Meyers again.
Me
Hey, look,
again.
everybody. It's Misty L. Butler.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, Misty.
Where'd she come from, and why is there a piano behind her?
Well, you're about to find out. So for those of you who are not familiar with Misty, she grew up in the small town community of Smiths Grove, Kentucky, where she was drawn to music and writing at a young age. She was writing stories for family members in first grade and began piano lessons at age 10, so explaining some of the piano behind her. In adulthood, she studied from several well-renowned musicians and teachers. Misty began teaching piano as her full-time career in 2003. In 2009, she became a nationally certified piano teacher, and she still teaches piano as well as ukulele from her studio in Bowling Green. She's composed 2 piano books to help students learn to read music and is in the process of recording an album of original songs. Ooh. In March, she released her first single, Sweet, Sweet Summertime. Another single will be coming out in the next couple of months, along with her 4th book, which is a children's chapter book and a sequel to her previous release. Misty's also a consultant of 2 organizations that sell handmade items by women coming out of extreme poverty and human trafficking. Misty loves knowing that each item sold is helping provide for a woman's basic needs as she rebuilds her life. We definitely need to put that in the show notes, a link to those organizations and what you sell, because that's really, really cool and that's important. So
I'm impressed. I'm going to watch this episode for sure.
Misty, was there anything that you wanted to add to that or to clarify?
You know, I was just excited when Jon asked me to do this because music and writing have always been my big loves. And now I've got these 2 organizations I work for. So it's just, I'm getting to do a lot of my passions in life. So
yeah, and you're our first musician, so we like to say, you know, this is Write Better Get Together. It's not just fiction or nonfiction. Right. It's songwriting, it's poetry, it's all of it. And so we're really happy to have you on here to represent the musicians in our listener community.
And she does so much, like you just read a book of her bio, and she does even more than that. Like she played the organ at the minor league baseball game twice last year. Like everywhere, or she plays at this thing at the church with this thing, and like no matter where you look, there's Misty playing something.
Doing something. And I enjoy it. I'm really lucky because every day I get up and I get to do things I enjoy. So
yeah,
rather than going to work. So those are things I'm really thankful for.
And piano teachers are they're creative, or they wouldn't be a teacher,
right? But
they're so patient.
Yeah,
like they have more patience than any other whatever segment of employment that I can imagine, other than those people like diffuse bombs. They might be a little bit ahead of you, but piano teachers are just so patient.
Yeah, you have to be really patient because we're working with all ages. I've got kids as young as 4 who are just cool. And so with those little bitty kids, I just get them, I tell the parents, let's just get together like 15 minutes once a week and just do a basic introduction to music. And, you know, don't stress over them becoming a big piano player yet. Just kind of get the basics down and do some music games and activities with them. But I also teach adults. And one time I had an 84-year-old man take piano lessons.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
I work with all ages, and I tell them, like, music, it's such a skill that you can use your whole life. Like most people, like sports are great. I have so many students involved in sports, but for most people, there's a window of time that you can play. But people throughout their whole life, they can usually sit down and play an instrument if they've learned that skill. So it's just
that's true.
Wow, that's a really good point.
So the reason I asked Misty on in the first place is within so talk about this serendipitous thing that happened. Within a 24-hour period, Emily went to a writer conference in Nashville that she talked about on the show. Misty went to the same conference in Louisville 24 hours apart. And I want them to compare the 2 experiences. There were different speakers at both, or some overlapped, or like, just tell the audience all like what that was.
Yeah, so you start. I've already kind of talked a lot about my experience, so I'm curious about yours.
I really enjoyed the conference, and there were 3 things that stood out to me that I really enjoyed. It was probably the same at your conference, but we got to sign up in advance to talk to some literary agents.
Yes, same for us. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I loved that, just getting that experience to talk to them and share some of my ideas with them and get their feedback. One thing I thought that was really interesting, because the last book I wrote and the one that's about to come out, they're both children's chapter books, and they're for that middle grades, like third grade through sixth or seventh. And what I thought was really interesting is the agent said that's actually a hard field to break into right now. And I asked him why. He said because kids were really strong readers and doing a lot of reading pre-COVID. And since then, like, that readership among that age group has gone down. So I thought that was really interesting, because I do see those things in my students where, since COVID, things are different. They're learning things differently. So that's an area as writers we can all work on to encourage kids in that age range to get back into reading. And
yeah.
So we just read an article, and so it hasn't come out yet, but we were on a little mini episode of WriterCon podcast, and they talked about this article that Gen Z people, the oldest Gen Zers are now 27 years old. They're reading with their kids. They're sitting down at night reading alongside their kids. And so the 6-year-old is getting exactly what you said, Misty.
Yeah, and that's something I've been promoting, like with my books. Like, a lot of people ask what age range are they for, and even though they're for that middle grades, I tell them they're still good books for parents to start reading with younger kids out loud. So
yeah.
family oriented story, I think, is what I'm writing in those. Did you get to talk to an agent at your conference?
Yeah, so same thing, and it was a really neat and important thing, I think, because I know a lot of people who've said, like, oh, go to a writing conference because that's where you get an agent. And you can also just ask them a lot of questions. Like, I made sure that if we had extra time, like we were kind of done, I would ask them as many questions as I could. Like, how's YA doing right now? Like, kind of like what you were saying about middle grade, like, how's YA doing? Is this, because I was pitching a YA fantasy novel, and I was like, this is really different from a lot of other fantasy novels. Do you think it still works? And they were like, absolutely. And they can give you a lot of important, up-to-date information because they're in it all the time.
Sides that we don't get to see as the writer. Also, we're getting the opportunity, anyone who attended that conference gets the opportunity to talk to some agents online at a future date. Have you gotten to do that?
I decided not to, but I think that's a really, really cool opportunity that they were doing, because not all agents obviously can show up at every conference around the country. And so it was a neat thing that they included for that.
Right. So I'm looking forward to, I think the end of July, I'm going to try to sign up to talk to some agents online. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say, I have done that in the past through the Manuscript Academy, and they do, it's less about querying, like actually pitching, and more about, it's a conference. It's like a little mini meeting that you can have with an agent who they'll read your query and give you feedback on your query. And so doing that, that's actually why I ended up adding like 20,000 words to my book, was because of an agent's advice. And so that's also a really helpful thing for our listeners. Manuscript Academy, they do this like all the time. If you go to their website, they're always having like opportunities for you to meet with agents.
That's good to know, because I wasn't aware of that. So that's something I'm going to check.
So I was going to ask Misty what your process was. You don't have to name names, but at the end of July, when you are going to do that and reach out to them, what was your process in deciding who you would reach out to and who you wouldn't reach out to?
Like which agent?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, they sent me a list of the bios of all the agents. So I get to read through and kind of get some idea of their background and their experience and what type of writing they deal with. So I'll try to look at that and match it up with the kind of writing I've done. And one thing about the kids' books that I'm really excited about, something that I think makes them kind of different than the other books out there, is I'm trying to weave music into the stories. And when you open up the book at the beginning, it'll say glossary of musical terms used in the story, because so many kids in that age range, a lot of them are in band at school, or they're in dance classes, or they're in some kind of private music lessons. So I wanted it to kind of be something that those kids would relate to. And throughout the story, it is a fiction story, but they're also gaining some music knowledge from the book. And And there's a lot of kids out there that haven't tried music yet. And I hope that from reading the story, they may think, hey, maybe I should join a choir or give band a try or try an instrument or something like that.
I love that. And on the like choosing the agents, I did the same thing. But it's interesting because I've met people at conferences, or even if you just look at the schedule of where people have signed up, you're like, why did this one person sign up for every agent? Because there's no way that every agent is looking for what that person is writing. And I find that very confusing. And also, how do you have the money? Because you have to pay extra for every agent that you talk to.
Exactly.
And so you do want to take the extra time to look into the agent and what they're actually looking for, so you're not wasting your time. And unless you just want the experience, that's a kind of an expensive way to get experience. But unless you just want the experience, you're really going to save a lot of time and money researching what the agent actually is looking for.
I thought that was a great
time. Go ahead.
I was so glad that conferences offer that, because you just get the other side of a perspective just by talking to the agents.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time too, like one of the things I hear from agents a lot is don't self-reject. So sometimes an agent will have something very specific they're looking for that they'll put on their bio, but that doesn't mean that you can't submit to them if they look like they might generally be interested in something you're working on. You don't want to just automatically be like, no, there's no way they'll, you're not looking for the agent that has like the magic words, like the key words from your manuscript. You may surprise them.
Yeah. And I've heard people say over and over that it can take so long for a writer to get an agent, that it's just good experience just talking.
It is. Yeah, for sure.
So in screenwriting, your first meeting, if you're skilled and fortunate enough to get one, it's called a general, right? And you do talk about your script, but they want to see how you are in the room. Can you take notes? Can you add that extra 20,000 words? Are you a jerk? Because they don't want to work with a jerk for 8 hours a day. And so in publishing, what percentage of that meeting it would be like a general, where they just want to know you as an author and your habits?
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
Did you get the opportunity, Emily? This was one of my other favorite things about the conference. There was a session where any of the writers who were interested, they could anonymously submit the first page of their book. And it was read out loud during this part of the conference, and the panel of agents kind of gave feedback on that first page.
Yes. I talked briefly about that, I think, on here. I can't recall, but yeah, that was so informative.
That was so interesting.
Because you don't know until you hear that, like, just how important that first page is. And the feedback that they were giving was just things that I hadn't even thought of before. Right. And it's neat to see too how an agent reads, like how quickly they'll say, I would stop reading here.
Right. Yeah. At ours, they would have them they said, okay, for the agents, if you would stop reading the first page, raise your hand. So the agents would raise their hand at whatever point they would say they would be finished with the book. And I think we get a lot of feedback from other writers or editors, but I think the agent's perspective is even different, because their goal is to put the book out there and to market it and sell it.
Right.
So it's just perspective.
Yeah. And they're trying to think of themselves as a reader, like, where are they confused, or where they feel like I don't know enough about this story yet? Because they're thinking, okay, you go to a bookstore and you look at the first page, and would you buy the book or not? And that's so they're being very, very picky, and it's kind of it was intimidating.
Yes, I was glad it was anonymous.
Yeah. Did yours get chosen?
They did read mine.
Oh wow! And
it was really, of course, you kind of look around while they're reading it to see how other people are responding, but it was just to hear your words read out loud. And I would kind of watch the agents' faces to get their feedback. And I just thought it was just a great learning experience.
Yeah, mine wasn't read, but I was nervous the whole time that it would be read. I was like, please don't read it, but also please read it. I don't know what I want.
If it was read, do you like the idea that it was anonymous like Misty does?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
See, well, we talked about this, so I won't go into great detail, but I've done this, and I didn't like that it was anonymous.
Really?
And people thought, and it was a smaller room, but people thought some that weren't mine were mine. And no, I want good or bad. I want people to know which one was mine. And so, but I understand both sides. I think I can understand both sides. So I'll just leave it at that.
And they've been in the business so long, they think of things that we wouldn't think of as the writer. I remember they were reading one page, and in this page, the character was like looking out the window as he was thinking deeply about something. And the agent said, "This is something we're so tired of a person making look out the window or look in the mirror while they're thinking deeply." And the man sitting next to me, he's grown, and he's like, "Oh gosh, that's mine."
I think that kind of shows too, because there's kind of, we haven't talked about this on the podcast, but there's kind of a question of like, do you need an agent or not? I think regardless of the answer, there's still a lot of things you can learn from agents because they understand the market and they understand what editors are seeing over and over and over again, and what it is that they're really, really trying to target for audiences right now.
I'm going to put you both on a spot. What's an agent's job? What do you think their job is?
I'll let you.
Well, kind of my impression was to get an idea of what books are going to sell, what people are going to want to read, and to connect that to the audience.
Good answer. Their job is to make money by connecting to the audience. That's their job. It's your job to help them make money. It's not their job to grow you, to nurture you, to baby you and coddle you. And they're like everyone else. They want to keep their jobs, right? Yeah. They either want to move up to their boss's job or they want to keep their job. And so their job, and the thing that does that, the language they speak, is money. Their job is to connect with the audience and make as much money as they can to keep their jobs.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And like you said, even if a person goes that route or not, whether or not they find an agent, whether or not they self-publish or go with a traditional publisher, it's just such a good learning experience to see it from all different angles.
Yeah, for sure. And even to get criticism on your query and on your first page, it's like it's invaluable. I was surprised, and I'm curious if you had this experience. I was surprised by some of the questions they asked me during the pitch meetings. So for instance, one was asking me like, how many revisions have you done? Has anybody read this? And it's kind of like what Jon Meyers was saying a minute ago, that it's not just about the story. They're also kind of testing you. They're going to be the ones who are going to be giving feedback. And so they want to make sure that you're taking it. Did you have anything like that just surprised you in those meetings?
Well, what surprised me in the meeting is the agent asked me when I got home, he said, "Will you send me the first 10 pages of your book?" Which I was really excited about because I didn't expect that. And so I did get home and I sent him those 10 pages and it went over really well. He said, "I just don't know how to put it on the market right now." So so it was kind of some excitement that at least I got that far along in the process with
For sure.
It kind of gives me some experience for the next time I talk to some agents, things I want to bring up or ask or what to look for.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I got a rejection, and she was like, here's another benefit of seeing them in person is they actually are more willing to give feedback. Because if you send something to an agent out of the blue through an email, you might get a form response, but I was able to get more specific feedback from her because we had met in person. Right. We had a connection. I had paid for her time. And so she gave more feedback. I still haven't heard from the other two, so we'll see.
Yeah. I thought the same thing, though, just from meeting him when we were able to email later. It was just, I felt like it just took me further in the process than if I just blindly.
Exactly. Yeah. What were some other things about the conference that you would suggest as beneficial to our listeners?
I think it was interesting to see, like, there were a lot of people around me that had gone the self-publishing route. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was encouraging because sometimes we just have to be reminded that it is really hard to get an agent and to get the publisher and to get all that to work out just the way you want it. So it's good to be reminded, hey, a lot of these people, they're self-publishing and they're in the beginning stages, but we're still doing it. We're still writing and still sharing our work.
Misty, don't I know I do. So I have a book of yours that's over there. Like, so you're gonna have to correct me on the title. I don't want to say the title wrong. And but it's over there that I got on Amazon, and it's not a children's book; it's a poetry book, right?
I've got 2 inspirational books that I wrote before. Yeah. And so it's like a collection. It's got poems, it's got stories from my life, it's got a lot of like just funny tales from the students I work with on a day-to-day basis. So I do have those books that are not for children also, and I loved writing those. I thought those were so much fun to write.
I love that. We'll also have links to those in our show notes for our listeners so they can find those.
So, but at the conference, you didn't talk about those to anybody.
Well, because the literary agent I signed up with, he was mainly a children's book literary agent. And I kind of looked at the other agents, and there just weren't any there for that genre of my other writing. But for the upcoming talks I'm going to get to do with some agents online, they do have some available for that. So I'm excited to kind of share both. When I get to talk to the agents online in July, they've got some agents available for both of the styles. Okay. So I'm excited about that.
That's neat too, if you can find an agent who is looking for the multiple genres, because I write tons of genres, and it's going to, I guess I'm just going to need multiple agents. I don't know, because I don't know how to find one that wants all of them.
Right, yeah.
Well, that's what I was, so Emily read my mind. That's what I was going to ask. So like in the hallway when you were talking to people, did the other genres come up? Because like Emily, you're multi-genre. And so did this memoir-ish type book, or you're working on a memoir with a retired person, like did those come up in conversation, not in an official session?
Yeah, like just in between classes or before and after the conference, people would ask each other, where are you from? What styles do you write? And different things like that. And so I did start out just writing more inspirational type writing, and then I kind of moved into the children's book writing. And I'm not like closing the door on the first style of writing. I kind of want to do it all. It just takes a lot of time to write books. But I've also, since I wrote the children's book, I've ventured into memoir style, like you're talking about. And I work with an elderly gentleman. He's 96 years old, and he is a war veteran of many wars. And when I met him, he had already written 2 books just about his experiences growing up, and then his experiences in boot camp and joining the military. And he said, I'm looking for someone to help me write my 3rd and 4th books. And so we connected, and like once a week I go to his house and sit for several hours typing things out, asking him questions. And it's so much fun to hear his stories. Now, when we started that 3rd book, it was a really hard project because what he had done, he already had a lot written, but he didn't have it written like in a document format. He had originally been writing out his stories in emails just to send to friends with no plans to ever write a book or publish. So we had to go through 3,000 emails, his email account.
Oh my goodness.
Copying and pasting them into a document. Then I had to start piecing them together in order, in chronological order. And that was a big undertaking. So I thought, we are never going to get these stories in order. But we finally got that 3rd book published of his, and we're working on his 4th book now.
So the email one's done. That's the 3rd one.
Well, it's done, but I actually was working a little bit ahead of the game. When we would go through those emails of his and I would pull out stories, I would say, hey, has this already been written, or does it belong to book 3? And he would say, well, that actually is way in the future. That would be in book 4. And he didn't know it, but I was copying and pasting those into a document for book 4. So when we finish book 3, I pretty much have everything we need in a document. Now we've just got to put it in order and edit it.
Wow. That is a huge undertaking, but that's so amazing to be able to help somebody tell their story.
It's great because I'll ask him questions, and sometimes he'll tell me about something that happened. Recently, he was telling me about, of course, several years ago, he worked in Indianapolis at a plant, at a factory, and there's this big explosion there. And I was able to Google that and find the exact dates and details about what happened. So just being able to see all those pieces come together. And of course, he wants to boxes of pictures so that he can use for the book. So it's just a great time.
Yes.
A great time of memories and hearing these stories and putting them on paper so they won't be lost.
Comparing the first two to the one that where you got involved, the third one, were you able to find the story? Because a chronological list of events of over a 20-year period in emails may or may not have a story. Were you able to find a story, a unifying thread to pull all those together?
Yes, and he's a great writer, so a lot of it was already in good solid story format. But I would go through and think of things like, what if instead of just narrating this, we put some dialogue in, or things like that. So just finding little things to edit it and bring it to life. And it's just been an incredible process.
So it helps that he was a natural born storyteller to start with.
Yeah, intelligent, very sharp, and so it's just been a great experience. And we're still going. We're getting close to book 4, but we still got a little bit more to piece together.
That is awesome. And then again, I want to have all of the links for our listeners that they can find that.
I have a challenging question.
Uh-oh.
And then you can give us the call to action.
Okay.
Compare. So how old is this person?
96.
Compare a 96-year-old to your youngest student, piano student, and I don't mean compare and contrast. I mean, what are some similarities between the 4-year-old and the 96-year-old?
Well, what's really neat is before I helped him with book 3 and 4, I read his first 2 books just to kind of see where we were and get a background and hear about his life. And in his first books, he talked a lot about his childhood, growing up, and the mischief, the things they would get into. And that was just so funny because, like, in all different generation, kids are just those curious, adventurous little characters. And he would talk about stories when they were like climbing up on top of roofs of buildings and jumping from one roof to another. I mean, just the crazy things that kids do. So, and he'll tell me stories a lot, and he'll say, I wouldn't do that now. I wasn't thinking then, but I wouldn't do that now. So it's just kind of interesting to see how people growing up, they're not always thinking, they're not always.
So Misty works with mischief makers.
Definitely.
That's the theme of your life story. Do you have a call to action for our listeners?
What I would think, when I look back on my first 2 books, and I said it's a lot of poems, but it's a lot of stories of things that happened in my life. And sometimes they're not huge, significant things that happen, but just little things. And so many of those things I read back now on what I wrote, and I think, if I hadn't recorded that memory would be lost. I wouldn't remember it now. But going back and reading it, it's got so much meaning, and I'm so glad I have that record. So I would tell someone, take 1 week, and at the end of the day, just jot down something that you want to remember from that day. It doesn't have to be big, but write down something you want to remember, because so many of those chapters I wrote in the first 2 books come from just something little from the day that I didn't want to forget. Yeah.
And so how do they get those to us, Emily?
Yeah, I love that. So listeners, to respond to our call to action, you can respond at the bottom of you can respond to the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform, you can go to our website at writebettertogether.com/podcast to find our show notes, and you can respond there. Or you can respond on our Facebook page, Write Better Together Now.
Cool.
We will compile all of it together. We'll find you somehow.
Some way, somehow.
Oh, and on Instagram. We never talk about Instagram, but you can also respond on Instagram.
We're getting so many, we'll talk about this later, but we're getting so many non-writers on our Instagram.
Oh, interesting.
So because we talk about creativity, so that's interesting.
We talk about mental health a lot too, and productivity and all of that. So that makes sense.
I'm going to go backwards. Sorry. So when Misty's call to action of write down like the one thing you remember from that day for 7 days in a row, I actually wrote down. So when you were talking about those anonymous first pages, when I've participated in those, I always write down as soon as they're done reading that first page, the one word that it might have been water, or it might have been the one word impression I got from each one, and then I wait to hear the people responding if that word ever comes up, or nature, or what is emotion, or whatever the word is. Do you guys do that when you're in those sessions at the conference?
I didn't, and honestly, I was just kind of a little on edge, waiting to see if they were going to read mine or not. And kind of like their feedback. So no, I didn't think to do anything like that. That's a great idea, though.
It kind of like boils down the one page into this one impression.
Right.
Is that like because you're planning on giving feedback?
No, I want to know. So there was this one I can remember in a cabin. It was just a scene of dry. It was just dry and like dusty, dry, like every sentence was permeated with dryness. And so I wrote something like dry or dryness on the piece of paper. And I wanted to see if other people who were picked up on the same thing that I did, because that's the impression that this person gave on the first page. So the novelist who was leading the session almost always brought up the word that I had written down, which I thought that meant that the author did a good job. If that's what they were trying to convey, that the author did a good job of trying to convey that.
I think that's a really good idea for a workshop.
Oh, for our workshop.
For that particular setting.
Yeah, like that.
For our MasterClass?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write
day.
that down. We're teaching a MasterClass, Misty.
Are you really?
Yeah, for the big money.
So we're going to WriterCon. So speaking of conventions, we're going to be at WriterCon in August in Oklahoma City, and we're going to be teaching. We're going to be all over the place, but we're going to be teaching a masterclass on starting a podcast from scratch.
Yep. All right. Speaking of that, we're ending this podcast by playing a game. Hidden in plain sight, Emily, this entire time. We can't call this contractually. We cannot call this The Price is Right. So this is, I don't know, The Price is barely in sight. I don't know what to call it. But Misty is wearing 3 items this entire interview from those organizations that she works with to help people that stop that go towards helping curb human trafficking. And so she's going to show us those items, and then we're going to guess the price, like Prices Are Right, guess what country it came from.
Oh, wow.
And then guess the name of the person that made it. And I have purposely not watched. You know how much I love her show. I have not watched for a week once I came up with this idea. I don't know any of those things on the things that she's wearing. And then so Misty's gonna have to lead us through that. Then tell us at the end who won. Like, don't tell us after each item.
But this is pretty intense.
How am I supposed to guess a name? Like, if it's made in like
Emily,
Uganda or something.
Name every cartoon character in the history of time from the beginning till now. That was one of the challenges I had.
That was much easier than this.
All right. The first item is.
Okay.
Oh, and we're hypothetically playing for these items, even though we'll never see them.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so you want me to see the item?
Yes.
Okay, so the first item is this kimono that I'm wearing.
Ooh, love.
Isn't it pretty?
It's gorgeous.
And of course, you can't feel it, but it's just very sheer and very soft, so very lightweight for the summer heat right now. It's the Freely Given kimono.
Freely Given kimono.
Yeah, it's got all kinds of different colors to it. And they also you can also buy like a matching headband that goes with it.
Oh.
I'll give you a clue. It's marked down right now.
Oh, my goodness. That.
So you can't lose.
I had a price in my head, and now you've thrown me. I'm going, and don't tell us what for right or wrong until the end. And if you go over, you lose. So that's how it works. So I'm going to say it was $48, and now it's marked down to $39. I'm going to say It's from Uruguay, where the penguins go on vacation. And as we established in a previous episode. And I'm going to say it was made by a woman named, what would someone in Uruguay? Ursula. Ursula in Uruguay.
All
You
right.
better write those down. You better write those down. Or you're going to forget them at the end. Emily?
Okay, I'm gonna guess, and then I'll say Guatemala, Isabella.
Aw.
Very nice.
All right,
Okay,
Emily goes first on this next item, and the next item up for bids, Misty.
All right. So the next item, okay, it may be hard to see, but it's called the Heirloom Charming Necklace. And see how it has this little round piece here? That's a toggle that you can wear charms on. So it's by Trades of Hope, and it's available in silver and gold. I didn't put a charm on it just so you could see what it looks like, but you can wear them alone or you can add charms. And everything's like really high quality, very well made. So who wants to go first?
Emily's going first this time.
Oh, this is so hard because I don't want to like.
It's the hardest game I've come up with.
This is very hard. Then when you say it's high quality, like what's the material?
Let me pull that up real quick. But I can tell, like, prior to working with these companies, I had just a lot of different, like costume type jewelry. And once I started getting these items, I actually kind of purged a lot of what I had because I could just tell these were made so much better. They hold up better. Just make my feels. Let me see if I can find what it's made of.
Now, and I'm not super familiar with this company, so when you say different countries, like is that that's part of the company, is that they're all made in different countries?
Well,
They're made all over the world, I think.
Yeah,
Correct
well,
me
so
if I'm
it's
wrong.
two companies. Yeah, two companies that I'm representatives for. One is called Trades of Hope,
Okay.
and the other is Crown Free. And what they both do is they take women. There are some men in it also who have just come through like horrible circumstances. Some of them were involved. They were victims of human trafficking or exploited into sweatshops. There's some that were sold into brothels, some forced into child marriage. So they take these women who have been through this and they train them as artisans. And then they become employed as artisans that just orders for their products all over, from people all over the world, help keep them in safe jobs, making fair wages. And the women are from all countries, including the USA. So we've got
I didn't know that.
Too.
I also thought it was all jewelry. So with the kimono, I learned that it's not all jewelry.
Yeah, there's clothing, there's home decor, there's kids' items.
Decor, yeah.
Yeah, there's just all kinds of different things.
All right, Emily,
Okay.
you've procrastinated your guesses long enough.
Okay, here I'll give you the description. This gold-linked chain necklace is a wardrobe essential with its adjustable front toggle ring that makes adding charms easy. It's got a customizable link in the back.
Okay, I'm gonna guess that it is $30, and it is made in Canada by
Pinocchio.
Mark.
Mark.
All right, and I had a name come to me, so if this name is correct, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to say, but you said it was on sale, right?
It's on sale right
So I'm going to say $72 on sale for, what was your guess, Emily?
30.
30. I'm going to say on sale for, I don't know, $39.99. I'm going to change it to $39.99. And then I think it's either from Nadia or Natalie or Nadine, something like that.
One guess.
So I'm gonna say, Nadia from
Nadia.
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
What a beautiful name.
Okay, so do we go on to the next product now?
The final item up for bid is
This bracelet is called the Faith Bracelet. Can you see it okay?
yes.
You see it? Okay, so I'm trying not to give too much away, but these are amazing because some of these beads are actually made from cereal boxes. Yes, if you look close, see it. But if you look closely, some of these beads, the artisans actually cut cereal boxes into strips. They roll them. Then, of course, they spray them with something that hardens and dries and gives them a bead format and texture.
Oh,
But
I want a Frosted Flakes one.
so popular, and we've got different kinds of them. They're just very loved. Isn't that pretty?
I love that.
Y'all know some of these.
All right. I love that. I want a Frosted Flakes one and a Captain Crunch one. And
we had at a vendor event one time. My mom was with me. We had a table set up, and we were telling the customer how these were made. And a little boy picked one up and said, "Mom, I see Captain Crunch."
There you go.
He couldn't really, but he thought he did.
I'm gonna say $42. Is this one on sale too?
Let me see. Let me double check.
Well, by the time this episode airs next year sometime, I'm kidding. It won't be on sale anymore, but.
And it's called the Faith Bracelet.
Faith Bracelet. All right, I'm gonna say $42. I'm gonna say it's made by Sarah in the Sahara. So I have to know a country in the Sahara Desert. I don't know a country in the Sahara Desert.
It's a lot of countries, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not. This isn't a geography podcast. Geographic.
Somewhere in the Sahara.
That's gonna be my guess. Hopefully, Emily will get it right, and my terrible answer won't come into play.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Or it's gonna be like Finland, and if we know it won't be the Sahara.
I'm gonna Elizabeth in the U.S.
Your sister? Or your sister-in-law?
Yeah, Elizabeth, because that's something that she would do too. So Elizabeth, she's very crafty. I'm not guessing that it is her. I'm just using her name.
I thought you were guessing it was her. All right, tell us who the grand winner is, Misty.
Oh goodness. Okay. So back to the freely given kimono. I think Jon was the closest on that because you guessed a price of $39.
Correct.
And it's $39.60 right now.
Dude.
Wow.
From India, and it's made by a woman named Kavita. She's widowed.
I got goosebumps when you said those names, and I don't think
India.
I don't think India is anywhere near Uruguay. Where did you guess, Emily?
I think I guessed Guatemala, but I almost guessed India.
Yeah. Right. Next item. The charmless charm necklace.
Let's see. Okay, so this one, it's from India again. There's a lot from India because the exploitation is so bad there.
Yes.
Made by a woman named Madhvi, and she started this work because she was in a very poor family. Her father was having trouble providing for them. She's helping her father out, and it is $33.99, and I guess Emily said 30, and Jon said 30.
Yeah, I went over, so Emily wins.
You went over, and
yay!
All right, so Emily.
But wait, what was her name?
Madhvi.
And I said Nadia. Dude, that's so close.
So close. And then the last one, the Faith Bracelet. This one comes from Haiti, and
oh wow,
bracelets a lot because people in Haiti have been through a lot, like the
and
earthquake.
Haiti is in the Sahara, just as I predicted.
And just like gang violence, kidnapping. So definitely there. And it's made by a woman named Mackenzie. Isn't that pretty?
Oh, that is pretty.
I love that.
And the price, y'all both went over. The price is only $21.95.
Oh wow!
Yeah, great deal right now.
Yeah.
All for a great cause.
I almost said $1 in the spirit of prices.
You would have won. Thank you, Misty. That was fun.
Wonderful. That makes me. I just love that so much.
I do too.
I got goosebumps when you said two of those people's names. So there's an anointing on those somehow.
Well, one time I got to meet an artisan on Zoom, and she was from Cambodia, and she had been a victim of an acid attack. And there think that's how they punish women, is by throwing acid on them.
Oh my gosh.
Disfigure scars all over her face and body, had been through years of surgeries, of course, depression. But now she's an artisan. She's employed other artisans who also survived acid attacks, and she's married with two and has a home of her own.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a great way to end the episode.
Yes.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
You all.
Yeah.
This has been great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Misty, and the listeners at home, because, Emily, we
couldn't have done it without you.
We couldn't have done it without you.